Hi there, it's Tanya here, otherwise known as Tartan Taz. Welcome to my second part to my September Girl. As you can see, I'm just priming up my paintbrush and putting the first bits of colour onto her face. The watercolour set that I'm using is Winsor & Newton. It is a little travel kit and it has 12 half pans. Now I'm not using the brush that comes with it, the little silver bit that you can see in the middle, that is actually the brush. You pull the lid off, you reveal the brush, you put the lid onto the back of it, so that extends the brush ever so slightly. I haven't actually used it yet, as I have used my watercolour paintbrush with the water in the barrel when I've been out and about. But one of these days I will use the brush that comes with the set just to see what it's like. So back to the picture, you can see I'm trying to sort of vary the shading within the face. Obviously it's a little bit darker around about the eye socket as the eyes are sunken into the skull, and this is what I'm trying to achieve. You can probably see that there seems to be some harsh lines, so what I've been doing and what I've been seeing other people doing, and I've been trying to follow, is to go in with water on my brush to soften the hard lines. I am by no means an expert with watercolour. I am very much a beginner. I think it shows. However, I am learning with each and every painting that I do. I'm now going in with the darker colour to create the shading under the lips. Again, I'm trying to avoid any harsh lines and really trying to use shading rather than making it look like I've drawn on the lips. We're trying to give the face very much a 3D effect rather than just plain flat with colours. Sorry about the head in the picture. Unfortunately, when I'm concentrating on some of the detail, I do tend to have to look a little bit closer, apart from anything else. I'm also wear glasses, so it really does need to be that my head's a little bit closer to the painting in order to see what I'm doing. Now, the brushes that I'm using, let me tell you a little bit about them. I have bought Daler Rowney round brushes. It was a set of 3. They are graduate grade, so student grade really, I believe. And the size that I'm using for the detail, you can see me putting in a lot darker into the nose and defining the nose there, and I'm using the size 4 round brush. For the face earlier on, the brush I was using was the same Daler Rowney Graduate, and it was a round size 10. That's the biggest brush that I have, and I used the bigger brush in order to cover a larger surface area. I also have a Graduate Daler Rowney round size 6, which I did use on occasion to use in areas that were needing just a little bit more block colour than the detail, but not quite so much water required in the brush. So for smaller areas I used the 6. Okay, just watching what I'm doing there in order to be able to give you a little bit of further information. I've gone back over the dark parts and defining the nose, and in order to make the line a little less harsh and a little more subtle, but still keep the depth of colour, I have gone in with the smaller detailed brush size 4 with a little bit of water, softening that line, thinning that line, but still allowing the darkness to remain. I think I'm using the size 6 brush, just having a look. It could possibly be still the detail brush. I think it's still the detail brush, to be fair. I can just about see the 4. I've gone in with a pinky red colour for the lips. I decided to go with the pink colour rather than keep it neutral because I just wanted to have a little bit of fun with this girl. As you will see later on, I don't really use the conventional colour for hair. Some of the colours that I've used for the flesh might be of use to you. I used a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of burnt umber and some white to make it a little bit more subtle. When I needed a little bit of darker shading, I used a little bit more of the darker brown colour rather than the burnt umber. And I think it's the darker brown colour that I'm using here on the eyes. Again, going back in with just a little bit of water to just subtle up those lines rather than having them so harsh. This girl took me around about 40 odd minutes. In fact, it was actually nearly an hour, to be honest. This is set at ×4 the speed, and it was 19 minutes, so times that by 4, you're talking an hour anyway to do the face. There was a lot of going back in to do things. I think in places I may have overworked the area, but as I said before, I am learning, so it's all a learning curve for me. And it is around about now that had taken so long to do things that the camera beeped, indicating that it had stopped. The camera only actually runs for a certain period of time, it then stops. But luckily I wasn't necessarily in the middle of doing anything specific, so I was able to just get back up, switch the camera back on and get back to working on the painting. I've used a green colour for the eyes. This really goes with what I'm actually going to do for her hair. This was the point that the camera switched off and I switched it back on again. So as you see, there really isn't anything else that is particularly noticeable that I did off camera. I used a little bit of very subtle pink in order to do the little bit in the corner of the eye and also the inner eyelid. I used a little bit of blue to define the eyeballs we always talk about the whites of our eyes, but actually if you really look closely you'll find that they're not really white, and there's certainly shading in there as well. So just again taking my time, going over a few bits, softening a lot of the lines, and just working the detail and hoping for the best, to be honest. For those of you who have been following my YouTube channel, you may have noticed that the background is slightly different. Well, that's because it is different. I'm actually sitting at my dining room table. The table itself sits in front of patio doors, so there is lots of natural light coming flooding in, so I thought it might be an idea to check it out and see what the difference is in the recording. Certainly from my point of view, there was much more room. I didn't feel so claustrophobic. My art room upstairs is the spare room, and it is a very small box room, so it can become very easily cluttered when I bring out my art stuff. So it can sometimes feel a little bit claustrophobic. But sitting at the kitchen table, I've got much more room. There was certainly much more light, and I actually enjoyed sitting there. Whether I'll come down the stairs to do other projects, I don't know, because it will mean humphing a lot of stuff down the stairs. But it's certainly helpful to have that option, that I do have another space where I can sit and do my art. So moving back to what I'm doing, I'm really just trying to get the detail in the eyes. I've put in the pupils, I've left a little bit of white for the highlights, and you may have noticed that I'm blotting with a bit of kitchen roll. There are sometimes when you make a mistake, you can actually just put some clean water onto your brush, put the water onto the paper, that will activate the watercolour again, and you can remove, and that is very helpful, particularly when you're a beginner, because I've always believed that you had to get watercolour right first time, and if you made a mistake, that was it, you'd had it, the game was a bogey. But that's not the case. I think she's really starting to come together now, and this is where I start on the hair. I'm using a teal colour, which I love this colour. This has probably become my new favourite colour. I do love red, but in terms of my watercolours, I do love the colour of this. So at the moment I'm just putting in the darker defining lines, and then I'm going to try and block in some of the rest of the hair. I think for this size of space to fill in, I could have done with an even bigger brush, but I certainly just got by with what I was using. I put a little bit of yellow in order to give some highlight to her hair as well. Now just some mixing colour information that may be helpful to you. For the pupils, I don't have black, so I used a combination of the darker blue, the brown and the darker brown, and that can usually get a decent dark colour. For the darker of the teal, I used the teal colour with the blue colour, the darker blue colour, in order to darken up that teal. Certainly with a minimum of 12 colours to choose from, it is just a case of experimenting and just seeing what colours you can actually come up with. I do love the colour of her hair, but the finished product, the finished picture, I'm not quite so convinced that her hair is quite right. I don't know if that's because she is off centre, or if I've overworked her hair, or if I'm just not getting the detail of the individual hairs using this particular technique. But perhaps you could give me some feedback in your comments and tell me what bits of this girl that you like, what bits you don't like, or perhaps more what you don't like so much, what could improve, how could I improve it. If you're going to give me dislikes, please explain why, and offer an explanation, offer a solution if you have one, in order to help me to improve and to grow as an artist. I would very much appreciate that, because at the moment I'm just experimenting, just going with it, watching lots of videos on YouTube and watching other people's techniques, and just trying to incorporate it into my own paintings. And it's about now that I realise that I've missed her neck, so I'm just going in with a little bit again of burnt umber and yellow ochre and a little bit of brown. I don't quite get the same colouring as I did on the face, so lesson learned. I really should have done that at the same time, and then I wouldn't have had to have worried about making another batch of a colour that didn't seem to be quite the same colour as her face. However, obviously on your neck it is going to be a slightly different colour anyway, because there's a lot of shadowing, etc. So I think I managed to get away with that one. So here we are, coming to almost the end of the video. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you have enjoyed watching the video as much as I have making it. Take care everyone. Bye for now.